So the White House is taking the gloves off and threatening China over all of its alleged recent cyber attacks on American companies. Those companies include GM and Dow Chemical. Protecting American innovation is a top priority, but pressing foreign leaders just isn't enough. We need to do more, and joining me now is Colonel Cedric Leighton, former National Security Agency Director and a cybersecurity analyst. Welcome back to the show, Colonel. It's good to see you. And when people say we need to do more, how do you do more with a country that almost has us by the economic stranglehold? Because the Chinese, I'll get to the statistics in a bit, but they own a lot of our debt, and we don't want to make them upset, do we?
Well, that's part of the problem, Adam, and it's great to be with you again. Here's the issue. You have a situation where not only do they have us by the economic stranglehold, but they also have a situation where they are trying to really go ahead of us in a developmental sense. So that's why they're stealing our intellectual property. So what we're looking at doing here is we have to respond in kind. And that doesn't just mean trade sanctions, which in essence is what the White House is talking about. They can be upped and they can be increased by a substantial amount if the need is there, but it also calls for an active defense, an active way of approaching them and making sure that they understand that the minute that they attack us, either they're going to be attacked in the cyber realm or other consequences will occur to them.
Well, let me show the viewers exactly what I mean by economic stranglehold. The Chinese are still the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. December 2011, 1.15 trillion. December 2012, it was 1.2 trillion. Japanese are catching up, but the Japanese aren't nearly as much a cyber threat, perhaps, as the Chinese. If we were to retaliate, if I got to imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that our security forces kind of do the same kind of cyber stuff back at them, don't we? And if we do, wouldn't they perhaps threaten us with those treasuries, maybe dumping them and maybe taking our economy?
Well, there's certainly a risk for that kind of tit for tat in this business, Adam. But what you're looking at is, yes, we do have the capability to go after them in what is basically a kinetic, not a kinetic, but computer network attack type attitude. And if we engage in computer network attack, that then becomes the area that we need to focus on and have some specific targets to go after. Now, that is something, while we have the capability of doing that, we don't do that unless we get presidential authorization to do that, and that, in its big sense, has never really happened. So
our options are, as you said earlier, trade sanctions. But do we even have the ability, as the biggest trading partner with China, Europe's their biggest trading partner, but such an important part of our economy, do we have the ability to do trade sanctions without hurting ourselves in the process?
Well, that's always part of the problem, but there are certain goods, for example, T-shirts or something like that. They will come in, from China at a very cheap rate, but there are other countries that produce the same kinds of goods. So if you go after T-shirts, say, and get them from Vietnam instead of China, then you have an alternative supplier and you can circumvent the Chinese system. There's a way to do that. But in terms of cyber attacks, you have to really look at what is happening, and what you have to do is you have to make it more difficult for them to go after our networks, and that includes increasing our defenses, making sure that our defenses are not only adequate, but also a step ahead of the game, and that becomes very difficult. But the Chinese, as was evident by the report that the Mandiant Corporation released earlier this week, the Chinese are not the 10-foot-tall gorillas. They are basically just humans like you and I, and they do make mistakes.
And you have to stand up to a bully. You got to stand up to a bully when you're being attacked.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Colonel Cedric Leighton, I hate to cut it short, but I've got to let you go at this point. Former NSA Deputy Director, really appreciate your being here with us to discuss this issue.
My pleasure, Adam. Thanks for having me.